Welcome, and thank you for joining us tonight. I hope that things are going well for you and your family, and I hope that you're able to stay safe during these crazy, crazy times. I don't know about you, but this is really, I'm thankful for the opportunity that we have to share through video. But, I kind of miss the way we used to share things face to face. And hopefully, prayerfully, we will be able to get back to more of that as a church family very soon. But I am thankful for those of you that are not able to get out, or maybe those of you that are not in our area, that you have the opportunity to share with us in these videos as well. I want you to think about a word tonight: peace. And when we look around our culture, our world, with the division in our nation and the world, with dealing with this health pandemic nationwide, different people have different ideas about certain things, and we don't have to think long to know we do not live in a time of peace, right? Because you think about that word peace, and typically we would think about peace as a time that there's no war, a time where things are tranquil, a time where there is prosperity. In fact, the word, even in the Hebrew, has that idea of tranquility and prosperity. Even in the New Testament Greek, it still has that same idea of greeting, of tranquilness and prosperity, those kind of things. Well, I think of a time in my life. We all think about the era that we grew up in. I can remember my mother talking about growing up in the 60s, the 50s and 60s, and that era, and that music and the things that were happening in those times. Well, I think about the era that I grew up in. I was born in 1973, and so I came up through the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. But probably my favorite decade of all time was when I was about 7, 8 years old, through my latter elementary, middle school, and early high school ages, was the decade of the 80s. I loved the 80s. And this morning, as I actually are getting ready for this, as I look back through some of the things of the 80s, I listened to some of the 80s music, and I'm reminded of some of those groups and that music and the time and all the things that were popular. And I want to share some of those things with you, because when I look back at the 80s, man, what a peaceful time, really, for our nation. Were there some things? Sure. Like, I think about my life, and the biggest things that I was worried about was breakups and bad grades and things like that. But I think back to that time, and overall, we lived in a time of peace. I mean, man, the country was doing well. The economy was doing well. New things were coming out. Technology was changing, actually was really being pushed on us. Just a lot of exciting times. I think about some of those artists, and I just list a number of them, and I think about some of those artists and all the ones that came out during that time with music. I think about Michael Jackson. I think about the group a-ha and Take On Me. Those of you that are in your 40s, late 30s, 40s, late 40s, you'll remember all these things because you lived it as well. Whitney Houston, Guns N' Roses, Bon Jovi, Prince, Purple Rain, Lionel Richie, Queen. Another one bites the dust. Cyndi Lauper, Twisted Sister, the Fat Boys, Run DMC, Journey, Van Halen, Wham, Kool and the Gang, Duran Duran, and oh, you can never forget Phil Collins. I think about things that came out during that time, like the Polaroid camera. You could take a picture and it'd send that picture right out to you, and you had the picture right there instantly. Oh, I think about things like floor to ceiling mirrors. Those were in our houses, were they not? And we loved it. The electric typewriter, it changed the way things happened. leg warmers. All the girls and women wore leg warmers. I think about swatches. Now we have Apple Watches. Oh, the big thing in the 80s were the swatches. You remember those? I think about the Trapper Keeper notebook. Oh, man, what a breakthrough. Oh, and this was one of my favorites. The parachute pants. You remember those? Oh, they were great. Rubik's Cube came out, and it was a big hit. Now it's on shelves again today, but Rubik's Cube came out then. Cassette tapes and Walkmans. You could finally listen to your music portably. You didn't have to be in the house. You could walk around with it, jog, those kind of things. Remember the Atari 2600, and nobody could forget the clapper. Just, you plug these things into your lamps or whatever, and it comes on. And think about all the automated things we have today, but this was the beginning of all that. It was an exciting time when all this new technology was happening, was being introduced. Oh man, what a decade. What a time of peace. Well, not that I didn't have things that caused unpeace in my life during that time. I mean, things happened, but I grew up especially in that time, I didn't have a lot of problems in my family. Both of my parents are still married today. And I mean, I had a car wreck when I was 17, and boy, that was not peaceful because it could have been bad. And if I'd have had somebody with me, it could have been bad. But other than that, there were not any major things in my life. And I was able to come up through a peaceful time like the 80s. It was great. And then I went off to Freed-Hardeman. I had the opportunity to be at this Christian university surrounded by all these Christian people. Not that you couldn't get in trouble and not that people were not involved in bad things, but for me, coming out of public school and having the opportunity to go to a Christian school, it was just great. There was a lot of peace, and I was able to meet this wonderful young lady from Corinth, Mississippi. And we were able to get married, and this was on into the early 90s now, and still things were peaceful. Life was good. And we began to have a family, and just like all other people, and things were great. And then reality of life really began to set in with our second child, and he had a lot of health issues. You may remember us talking about this with Nolan. A lot of challenges on faith, and a lot of challenges on the peace that we had enjoyed for so long. Greta had gone through some of that earlier with the loss of her dad at such a young age to cancer. And so for a lot of times in our life, peace was there. But you see, it was the peace of the world. You see, the peace of the world says it's tranquility, it's prosperity, it's the absence of war, it's the absence of contention and confrontation. But then I go to John chapter 14. What an awesome passage in Scripture. John chapter 14, and what Jesus is spending some time with his disciples here. He's approaching the end of his time on earth. And he uses a word that I want you to think about because it's different from the way the world uses this word. And Jesus says these things, John 14, beginning in verse 25. These things I have spoken to you while being present with you. Being but the Helper, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, he will teach you all things and bring to your remembrance all things that I said to you. And here it is. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, do I give to you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. Wow, Jesus says, peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. But I'm not giving this as the world gives it. You see, peace in the world's mindset, that's what we've already talked about, is the absence of war. We don't have that right now, the absence of conflict. We're not in a peaceful time. In fact, we're left to wonder, God, where are you in this crazy time? The world is going mad. We are afraid to go out and to be a part of things because of this health pandemic. God, where are you? Where is the peace that we've enjoyed for so long? And Jesus at this time, he's washed the disciples' feet. The disciples are bickering and arguing amongst one another. Who's the greatest? And he's predicted Peter's denial. He's predicted the betrayal of one of his own. And then he says, hey guys, I got to leave. And I'm going to prepare a place for you that's, it's beyond your imagination. But don't worry, I'm going to come back and be with you. I'm going to come back and get you. And he says, not only that, I'm going to leave with you a helper, and I have to go so the helper will come. And in the midst of all that, in the midst of turmoil rising, you are about to further the kingdom that I have come and I've been teaching you about. And it's going to be crazy, and it's going to be hard, and there's not going to be peace. In fact, people, like they've tried with me, people will want to kill you. They will hate you because they hated me first. And then Jesus says this, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. And I'm not giving it as the world gives it. You see, the reality is without Jesus in our lives, we have inner conflict. We have inner war. We have the lack of peace because as the flesh, as humans, we seek to find peace in all places except for the place that Jesus offers it, the world in general. We find peace in things, in songs, in stuff, in the government. Just like I talked about the decade of the 80s. I loved it. But it didn't take long to realize that that's only fleeting. You see, the true peace that's found in Jesus Christ is forever. Because when we allow Jesus into our lives and we give our life to Him and we submit our life to Him and we die to our old self and we're able to rise again enacting the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ through baptism, and we daily give our lives to the Lord, see, that's key. We daily give our lives to the Lord, then we no longer have inner conflict. Oh yes, Satan's going to try to bring inner conflict to us. That's why Paul talks about I fought the good fight. We have to fight every day to be able to enjoy this peace. That means we continually to submit ourselves. And the more we submit and the more we dig in His Word, the more at peace our souls can be. Because Jesus says, I'm not giving peace like the world, but I'm giving you a peace that, it passes all understanding. I think about what the Ecclesiastes writer wrote. You remember Solomon in Old? We know the life of Solomon, and Solomon, he had everything. He was in charge. He was in control. He was king of the Israelites. He had everything. People came to him for wisdom. And you know what he said at the end of his life? Remember now your Creator in the days of your youth before the difficult days come and the years draw near when you say, I have no pleasure in them, while the sun and the light, the moon and the stars are darkened and the clouds do not return after the rain. Remember your Creator before the silver cord is loosed. And in verse 9 of Ecclesiastes chapter 12, he says this, and moreover, because the preacher was wise, he still taught the people knowledge. Yes, he pondered and sought out and set in order many proverbs. The preacher sought to find acceptable words, and what was written was upright words of truth. The words of the wise are like goads, and the words of scholars are like well-driven nails given by one shepherd. And further, my son, be admonished by these, of making many books there is no end, and of much study is wearisome to the flesh. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, and this is man's all. For God will bring every work into judgment, including every secret thing, whether good or evil. And Jesus says there at the end of chapter 14, and then goes into chapter 15. He says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away, and every branch that bears fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. Now, we can talk about the difference of bearing fruit, and yes, it does include leading people to the kingdom, but I think it also, bearing fruit is daily living my life for the King. Daily making some sacrifices for the King. Daily submitting myself to the King so that I can live for the King. And that's being fruitful. And Jesus says, listen, do that, disciples, and you will have peace. Now, I can't sit here and tell you that things are going to work out great. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know how things are going to turn out with this pandemic. I don't know how things are going to turn out with our divided nation. All I know is that the reality is we live in a fallen world, and things are going to happen. They've been happening since Adam and Eve was kicked out of the garden because of the sin that came through Satan, the temptation, and things have been happening and all through history. And they will continue to happen that way because we live in a fallen world, and there's a lot of people that struggle with that. How in the world can a God of love and peace allow kids in another country to go malnutritioned and to get sick and die? We live in a fallen world, and there are people and there are leaders and there are governments that let things happen in their nations because they're filled with greed and control and things like that. Even the Roman government, how did they have Roman peace? They forced it on people. They took things from people. They overtook a lot of the world, just like other nations up to that time. And here Jesus comes along during all that, and he creates conflict in the Jewish religion because God wanted to show people what he was really like. And he came in the flesh in Jesus Christ. And he had followers. And people were giving their life to him and they were believing. And he tells his disciples, listen, it's going to get tougher. But I'm going to leave you a peace. I'm going to leave you peace, and I'm going to give you peace not as the world. I'm going to give you a peace that passes all understanding. That in the midst of trial, in the midst of uncertainty, in the midst of difficulty, you can have peace. Not because things work out like you want them to. Not because all of a sudden there's peace in the world and the economy's great and I have stuff and everything in my family's good. Because the reality is, boy, that's not reality. And that's not a real world. Because Satan is there. And Satan is causing difficulty in our life. He wants to pull us down. He wants to pull us away from living for God. And that causes a lot of unpeace. I'm sitting here today in my backyard because to me this is a place. I've had a couple of yards in the houses we've lived that bring peace to me, and this is another one of them. We get to sit out on our patio. Miss Greta has created a fountain, and we have a swing, and we have some shade, and we get to enjoy the Gene Park, as we like to call it. Donnie and Sheila have a wonderful backyard, and ours connects up to it. But someday they're going to be burned up. There's going to be a new heaven and a new earth. There's going to be something new. The new Jerusalem, the new city of God. And John tried to describe it, and it's going to be awesome. There's going to be no pain, no sorrow, no tragedy, no war. In fact, the Son, Christ, God, the Spirit, they won't need a sun because they will light it up. Oh, what a peaceful place that sounds like. And I want to go there. And so that's the challenge for us tonight. Do you want to go there? Are you pursuing the Lord? Please, please pursue the Lord. Run after Him. Chase Him. Dig in His Word. Seek His peace, that peace that comes, that only comes from Him and that passes all understanding, because the world is not going to understand the peace that comes through Jesus. But we can live in such a way, we can pursue Jesus in such a way that people in the world can say, man, I want that. I don't understand it. How in the world, in a pandemic and in a divided nation, can you live like that? It's through a pursuit of Jesus Christ. And so we want to challenge you that. I want to encourage you to sit down with your family tonight and read through John 13, John 14, John 15, and talk about this peace that only comes through Jesus Christ. Talk about how we as God's people, as a Christian family, how can we live in this world during this pandemic, during this crazy time? How can we live peaceful lives in an unpeaceful time? Number one, the Bible tells us to pray for it. Pray for our leaders. Yes, go vote. Go vote with Christian standards, that people who will try to uphold those and create an environment that we can live in those so that we can live peacefully. The Bible tells us to do that. But also pray that we in our daily life can have the peace that only comes from Jesus Christ. And talk about ways we can do that. And pray together as a family. Pray about things and talk about things we can change in our family. This morning we talked about godliness and pursuing godliness and brotherly kindness, as Peter tells us. And pray about how we can do that. Talk about as a family how we can do that. Or you as an individual, think about ways you can do that and how you can live at peace and show people what true peace is. Maybe you want to give your life to the Lord. It's our prayer that you're ready to do that. If so, find another faithful Christian and let them assist you in that. Let them assist you in being a part of the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ by being baptized into Jesus through that watery grave of baptism, showing your faith and your belief in Him, and He will give you peace. Or maybe it is we can assist you in that. Look us up on our website, SavannahChurchChrist.com. Call us and let us assist you in that if we can. Maybe it is you just need to pray. You just need prayers. You have some anxieties. I've already admitted I have some anxieties about school starting in this pandemic. I don't want my family to get it, but I just keep daily taking that to the Lord and asking for peace and asking for help and asking for Him to watch over us as we go through this time, as we live our Christian lives and give Him glory. And that's the only way I know to have peace, that peace that comes from God through Jesus Christ. If we can assist you anyway, let us help you. Call on us. I want to encourage you, if at all possible, if you're able, if you're willing, if you can be with us on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. when we meet together, we hope and pray that the Lord will allow us to keep doing that because it is a blessing to meet with God's people. It does bring us hope. It does bring us peace because we encourage one another in that way. Come and be with us if you can. If not, please at least join us online through our Facebook page and YouTube channel. If you can't join us on Sunday mornings at 10, meet with us on Sunday evenings at 6 and Wednesday evenings at 7. And also, go back and look at our archives on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. Be encouraged. That's our goal, to be challenged and encouraged as we live through these uncertain times. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. God bless.